where do you even start with bullying? Hi everyone, welcome to Talk and Chalk. I'm Beck, and if you're new here, this will be the first time you've seen me, so you've got no idea that I'm filming differently today. For those of you that are normally with me, I'm not filming on the laptop today, I'm filming on my phone, and for a very good reason. I've had to hand my laptop in back to school because I'm taking on a new role for the next 8 weeks, only temporary, going into a bit of a corporate role, I guess you'd call it. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know all about it, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, all my links and everything are below. I'm really excited about it though. Bit nervous at the same time, and it was very, very unexpected, but I'm very excited, and I start on Monday for 8 weeks, so I might be able to update you guys on that through the YouTube channel over that time. I need to check and make sure if there's anything I'm not meant to be saying, so I'll find that out soon enough. But it also means I think I'm going to reduce the amount of videos that I make for that amount of time. So I think for the next 8 weeks, I'm just going to do one a week, and I'll upload over the weekend. And if you want to make sure you get my notifications, just click the subscribe button. I think there's a bell that you can click on somewhere down there too to be able to get notifications. I've never used it before, but I know other YouTube channels mention it. So if you see a bell somewhere, click on it and see if you get a notification, I guess. I should probably research that a bit more. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys tonight just about bullying. And there is no way that you could cover everything that, you know, we would benefit from in regards to bullying or combating bullying or fighting bullying or preventing bullying in one video. So all I'm going to do today is just talk about a couple of things that I found to be quite successful when dealing with this scenario. And I've used it in a couple of different schools, and keep in mind, anything that I tell you guys is just based on my experience, my own research, things that I've done in schools, or the experiences that I've had of people around me. So what I say is not gospel. It's not going to work in every school setting. It's not the be all end all. This is just me sharing my tips and advice. That was the whole point of this channel, is just to share what I have found that works for me. So if you need to take it and modify it to apply to your setting, go for it, you know. As long as I'm helping people, then that's the whole point. So I think the key thing when you're starting on any kind of bullying focus in your school is just, it's got to be a whole school focus. You've got to have all your parents on board, your community on board, all of your executive on board, and all of your teaching staff on board as well. All of your teaching staff, your aides, any people that come in and volunteer. This has to be a community approach. You've got to be a team when it comes to this, because any kind of, you know, crack that opens up, that's when things fall apart. So it's a big project to be able to, you know, change a culture in a school, especially if you feel you have some kind of bullying culture in your school. You can make significant changes from the classroom level though, and that comes down to the relationship that you build with your students. So you need to be using that language that revolves around bullying or mistreatment, or, you know, how you act towards other people. And really, health is our best area to do that in a social skills program. So when I'm talking about that language that you use in the classroom, that's talking about what bullying actually means. So when someone says he was bullying me, you need to talk about the specific behavior. How is he bullying you or she? What did they do to you? What did they say? And if it was, he kicked me, you know, let's ask about, is this the first time that they've kicked you? If yes, okay, then we need to realize that our kids may not necessarily mean that. Bullying is a behavior that's repeated. It's repetitive behavior. It's targeted. And quite often it could be a behavior that's being mimicked from somewhere else. Those of us that have been teaching for a long time have discovered that many, many children out there with bullying behaviors do not know they're bullying. It has to be pointed out to them. They have to be explicitly shown that what they're doing is a bullying behavior. And a lot of times too, we know that it's something they're copying from an adult they've seen around them. Not all cases. Some kids are just horrible kids. It happens. We have beautiful kids, and some kids are just like that when they're younger. They don't always grow up and stay that same way. We just know that sometimes their personalities at that age aren't the nicest personalities. However, we do know that sometimes those kids are being severely mistreated at home. And when they come to school, it's the only place they feel like they're in control, and then they act that out because they want to feel like they have that control in that way, that the only way that has been shown to them. So if you've determined that you've got a child in your classroom that is displaying those bullying behaviors, they're targeting that one kid, it's a repeated behavior, and that, you know, it fits that criteria, that's when you need to address it specifically with that child and point it out with that child. And it doesn't have to be through you. It can be through the counselor. It can be through your executive. It might mean bringing the parent in. And the one thing that I think that is the most significant thing that you will ever be able to do with these kids is get them to write it down, a student statement. And I've used these across different schools. I'm talking just a piece of paper, and at the top it says student statement, no school logo or banner or anything like that, just plain student statement. It has their name and the date. And then it's just got lines. That's it. And it has a spot at the bottom where the student can sign and date. And you just ask them to write down what happened. Write down what was said, write down what was done. And don't use the language, what did you do, what did they do? Just write what happened. So you tell them, write down what happened. Write down what was said, write down what was done. Don't specify names or anything like that, but tell them, I want you to tell me everything that happened. 9 times out of 10, they'll admit it. They'll put it down on that bit of paper. I said this, they said that. I did this, they did that. Because when they're getting it down, essentially that's a nice debrief for them as well. They can get it down on paper before they get into that really emotional moment where they say something out loud. For some reason, that language, when we have it, it's like when you have to tell someone bad news. Thinking it in your head is one thing, and when you say it, that's when the emotion comes out and you feel it so much more than just putting it into your head. So by putting it down on paper first, it helps them debrief, it helps them get their thoughts out, so that when it comes to that moment to actually say what happened, they get a little bit of control over that, they get a bit of ownership over that and some understanding. And it means too that if they do have that emotional breakdown and lose it, you're not getting caught up in that, because you've still got it, and you can take that and support them. So I can take that bit of paper and say, okay, this is what you've written down, and read it back to them. Have you missed anything? You know, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me or you'd like to write down? Because having that statement, it's so powerful, having that piece of paper to be able to go, you said this happened. This has happened before. I've got 2 other bits of paper that said you kicked that same person. When you're kicking the same person and doing the same thing every day, and it's only that person, that's a bullying behavior. And for our kids, I personally believe that it's important to separate the student from the behavior. The behavior you're displaying is bullying. I don't think you're a bully though. I know when you're in my class, you're a great drawer, you're awesome on the computer, you're always willing to help that other person read their book, but this is a bullying behavior, and I don't want you to be a bully for your life. And then that's when you need to go on and work with some other scenarios to help them understand that that behavior isn't appropriate and that they need to choose another kind of behavior when interacting with that child. So being able to do this though on a whole school level is trickier, but it can be successful if you all do it together. So I've had those conversations as an executive, not necessarily as a classroom teacher. Sometimes I wear both hats. And that bit of paper obviously is not to be sent home. It's not for parents to gawk at. It's really just for your record to be able to say the student admitted that they did something wrong. And the power for them to be able to admit that they did something wrong and move from that is what's going to really change that culture in the school of bullying, if you believe you have that culture. If that student is the only student doing it, then you need to look at behavior management just for that particular child. And there's so many different ways that you can do that with, behavior charts, reward charts, or setting up a behavior management plan. That's much more detailed. But just having that statement, so that at least then if you're in that situation where a parent comes up and says, I don't believe my child did that, you've got that to be able to say, they've written it down, they told me. And after you've done this for a while, parents learn what the process is. So at first they might go, well, you know, you told them to write it down or something like that. We've always had those parents that can't necessarily see their child's behavior is different at school to what it is at home. You can photocopy that and, you know, redact other student names if need be, so they can see what happened on there. And, you know, you would never tell that parent necessarily the consequence for the other child. You would just say, look, the school discipline process has been followed. The consequence procedures or whatever you've got in place have been followed for those other children. But you need to know that this is what your child did. What happened with your child and whatever consequences followed for your particular child. And it's in line with school procedure. And you need to have those procedures on paper and documented and published for the parents to be able to know that that's in place. So if you're going to put something like this in place, you need to put it into your newsletter or send a letter home or something saying, you know, we are trying to combat any kind of bullying behaviours established in our school. If any issues arise with students that we deem necessary, students will be asked to write down a statement of what happened, and then executive will follow up using the school behaviour procedures, or whatever it is that you have in place, just so they're aware of this. And it shouldn't be a scary thing. If we're building up that community relationship, parents will want to be on board with it. The hardest part is the language, because we get a lot of parents or students coming up, you know, in our career. I don't mean specifically right now, I just mean in our career. You'll have those parents that will come up and say, that child is bullying my child because of one thing that happened. Well, at least one thing that's been reported. The hardest thing ever that teachers and parents, police, anyone will ever have when dealing with any kind of bullying behaviours is the invisible nature that it has. It always goes on in the shadows, in the darkness, around a corner, on a computer, late at night on a phone. We rarely see it in action. You know, we see a fight break out on the oval, we go up and separate it, and chances are it's, you know, a disagreement over a game or whatever, and emotions ran high and they got into fisticuffs. We see that. We don't see the kid walking around the corner that gets his hat knocked off him every single day by the other same kid. We don't see those little things, and it's hard for us as teachers and parents and community to be able to see those little things. You know, you're at the shops one day and you see a girl walking past and a couple of blokes, you know, wolf whistle and say, you know, call her a name. We don't see the 10 other times they've done it that week. And this is the hard part, is being able to see it. And we need to make sure our kids know that they have a voice, that it can be used, that it's not shameful to use a voice, and to make sure that they're not a bystander. The bystander part is the big one. We see all those videos out of kids getting into fights on school ovals and stuff. Why are they always Australian too? They're always Aussie. And there's always kids around cheering and videoing. You rarely see anyone saying stop. Someone always goes home and tells mum and Dobbs, or gets on Facebook and says something, but no one's saying stop right then. And we need to empower our kids to be willing to say stop or no. And that's the hard part. That's really hard. A good video, and I used this recently too, is it's a Pixar short film, and it's called For the Birds. And if you can find it with the original audio, it's always better. And if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a video about all these little birds that go and sit on the wire, on an electrical wire, little puffy blue birds. And they're all sitting there talking away, and they yap, 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 and they don't look like the nicest sort of birds. And then a big sort of goofy looking bird honks to the side, and they start making fun of him. And this is all done non-verbally. It's all just using bird sounds, tweets and chirps and things. And then the big goofy bird flies over and tries to sit in the middle with them. And obviously these other birds don't like that, and then they continue mocking him, and then they start pecking at his foot to try and get him to get off the wire. And a really good conversation can come out of this at any age, because the little birdies are chanting on the two birds that are closest to the big one. So these two are the bullies. These are the ones that are pecking at him and really getting loud at him. And these ones sitting on the wire, they're the bystanders. They're the ones not saying, no, you're being mean, this is not right. And they can see that. Kids pick up on this stuff. They can see it. When they see it, they know it. When they're involved in it, they know it. So we just need to empower them with the tools to know what to do next after it happens. So one of the tools that we as teachers can give them is that power to write it down, and we follow up. We make sure we follow up as teachers, and that's where your whole school needs to be part of that process. Which like I said, you know, I was able to do that as executive, and I feel like it did create a culture shift when you get used to that. You know, those student statements end up, you know, deteriorating as the year goes on, becoming less and less, because the kids are used to it. They know what the expectation is. They know what that behavior is. You've been very, very explicit about it. And those kids that have been identified as having high behavior needs are being modified for. So, I think that was probably a lot of ranting tonight, but like I said, you just can't narrow down bullying in one video. So getting the whole school on board with one consistent approach, talking about the language that's involved in what bullying is. There's a difference between someone being mean to you and someone actually bullying you, whether it's physically or, you know, cyberbullying or verbally or emotionally, whatever. There's a difference between a one-off event and that continued, repetitive, targeted type of bullying. Making sure you're explicit about what bullying is to the kids, and letting a child who is displaying bullying behaviors know that what they are doing is a bullying behavior. They need to know it. And then just communicating with parents as well, because sometimes those parents, they're just mind blown when they find out what their child is doing at school or outside of school or online at night. Sometimes they're just unaware. So if you can engage in any of those programs like the Triple P parenting or the cyberbullying, you know, there's lots of ones out there. Just get that information to your parents. But what you can do in your classroom is build up that team sense of, we work together. We do not stand for that. We will not be bystanders. We are people who stand up and say no. And that's a good way to start making that change. Overall, we need to try and combat an invisible problem by making it visible with our voices. And the only way that we can make it visible with our voices is empowering our kids to be able to have the confidence to say, that's not right. And we as teachers also have to make sure that our relationships with our kids are just built on trust. So they trust that when they say something, we'll protect them, we'll stand by them, and they know that, you know, we're always there for them. So that's a tough topic. Okay guys, I'm going to finish up there tonight. So like I said, one video a week. On the weekend I'll upload. If I find that this new role of mine allows me to have that extra time to continue with my videos, then I'll go back to uploading 2 a week and see how I go. If you want to follow me and my new job, just follow me on Twitter. I think it's BeckQuest81 is my handle. Yeah, you'll find me on there. I will link one of my, I'll link my, what do you call it, subscription button down here, and I'll link one of my other videos at the top there. And let's see if I can find something better than my camera to video on. Bye.